Well, hello, I am Adrian Reed, and I'm very pleased today to be joined by Christina Lovelock for this very, very brief conversation about a really interesting topic, which is retrospect or retrospecting yourself. So, Christina, you're talking at the Building Business Capability Conference in Vegas, of all places, in a few months' time, or no, less than a month's time. And I'm sure when people hear the term retrospect yourself, they'll be thinking of retrospecting in project teams, in scrum teams, lessons learned. What do you mean by retrospecting yourself, and what are you going to be talking about in your session?
Thanks, Adrian. So retrospectives have become a lot more common. It's something that a lot of teams and organisations encourage their staff to take part in. But what I've noticed is that there's a lot of subjects that teams find it difficult to talk about. They tend to operate at a more process level. The things that let us down, the process. This didn't work quick enough. This wasn't as slick as we would have liked. And I feel like that's really only touching the surface of what a retrospective can give a team or an organisation. So I've talked about using a number of techniques that we can apply to ourselves in 4 different ways: our behaviours, our relationships, the outputs that we produce, and I think it's so important that we think about how we're behaving and interacting with others as part of that wider consideration of what improvements can be made in teams. So my session it's a bit like a guided meditation, but it's a guided retrospective. So all of the audience members will be asked questions by me, and they'll be using the visual techniques to be able to think about improvements that they can make in their own relationships, behaviours, and outputs.
Well, that's really interesting, Tina. And I should of course say that if for those people who are attending live, you can add comments and ask questions, and we'll bring the questions and comments up on the screen as and when they pop up. So Tina, in terms of retrospecting, is that something that's done individually? Is it something that's best done as a team in this sort of behavioural sense? Because it sounds like, or I'd imagine there will be benefit in doing it individually, but also in getting others' feedback. Would you agree with that, or is it best done one way or the other, or both?
Hi, Adrian. Sorry, I lost you there. That's how we really know that it is live. Ask me that question again.
Absolutely, yeah. So, so I was saying that I'd imagine there'll be value in doing retrospecting individually, but potentially as a team as well. So, is it best to do it individually, as a team, or both?
So I really encourage people, well, certainly during this session, we'll be doing it individually, but I encourage people to do it themselves first. It's really easy to fall into a trap that the only way that we can learn more about ourselves is by getting feedback from other people. It's hard to think that we can actually learn things about ourselves just by sitting and thinking about it. And that is quite hard. But with the right frameworks, the right prompts, and the right questions, it's a lot easier to think about our own emotional responses and behaviours, and whether that they are helping us or hindering us when we're trying to contribute to the goals of the team and the goals of the organisation.
Yeah, it's really interesting you mentioned prompts there, because the question that brings for my mind now immediately is, without giving too much away, what sort of prompts, like if someone's thinking about retrospecting, what kind of prompts would you suggest they use?
So, thinking about the area of relationships, just asking yourself, who do I have the best working relationships with in my place of work? Are they in my team? Do I get to work with those people? And if not, how could I engineer more situations where I do get to work with those people that I enjoy working with and work well with? So, thinking about those relationships that are kind of the positive end of the spectrum and how we can maximize those as part of our working lives. And then conversely, thinking about some of the relationships that we know are poor, the people whose emails make our hearts sink and just, oh no, I'm going to have to deal with that person, and where I find it very difficult to deal with them. Thinking about how that relationship is, the part that you're playing in it, and how we could possibly make small steps to make that working relationship better. So it's thinking about all of those different prompts of different types of relationships and the role that we play. And it's all about making our working lives better, thinking about those different areas of behaviours, relationships, and outputs, and how just small changes can make a big impact.
That's really interesting, Tina. What you were saying there reminded me of an article you sent me which had the idea of whether things are whether they feel yuck, like yum, whether what was it, yum or yuck? And is there an element there of actually, because I was just thinking about a particular email which definitely made me feel a bit yuck when I read it, and actually that's probably symptomatic of some stuff going on in a particular situation there. So is it a bit like doing a yum, this is going to sound awful, a yum yuck audit on things?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of asking yourself those questions. I'm having a reaction to that. Why is that happening? How could that be better? And putting our heads in the sand, which is often the route that we choose to take when there's a poor relationship at work, is definitely not going to make our lives any better. So, what would be some small ways that you could reach out to that person where there is a poor relationship to make that working relationship much better? And usually it's about understanding what that other person's trying to achieve. Now, it does feel like this sometimes, but mostly people don't come to work to wind each other up. And it's about trying to find those best working relationships, understanding different people's ways of working, thinking about the role that I'm really playing in this relationship and how it could be improved.
Definitely, and I think that is an important point to make, that people don't come to work generally to wind each other up, although that can be a side effect. So I mean, if you were looking at, you mentioned small ways of sort of reaching out or connecting with people. Have you got any tips? Are there things that have worked for you? Just those sort of small intentions to show that you want to reinforce a relationship that's perhaps gone a bit sour.
So I'll talk about the kind of the two ends of the spectrum again. Where there's somebody that you work really well with, it's easy to neglect those relationships. It's particularly now that we're working virtually a more of the time, you perhaps don't bump into the people that you saw regularly and someone that you worked with 2 projects ago. So it's about being intentional about those contacts and saying, hey, I haven't seen you for a while. We haven't had the opportunity to work together. How are things going for you? What are you working on at the moment? Just showing that you're still interested and not waiting until you have a specific reason or need something to contact that person. Just maintaining that relationship and checking in and making sure that relationship is still on track, even though you might not have worked together for a while. And then thinking about some of the poorer relationships is thinking about, I like to apply empathy mapping, which we tend to use for our kind of end users or end customers, but we can actually use it for any of the stakeholders that we're dealing with. So thinking about what motivates them, what are they seeing and hearing from me, and what are they seeing from hearing from others about me. So making sure that good messages are being put in front of them if it's a senior leader, making sure that the successes of the team are being put in front of them so they're not just hearing about problems all the time, and thinking about what's motivating them, what are the problems that they're having, and how could I do small things that help move towards success for the problems that they care about.
Yeah, that's such an important point, as well as putting ourselves in their shoes, thinking about the things that they particularly care about. And again, as you were talking there, I was thinking, and it's sort of inherent in what you're saying there. Sometimes it could be as small as like sending an article that you think they'll be interested in, just to keep that connection going with someone where perhaps the relationship's going well, or perhaps when it's not going well, showing that you want to, want to help them out with something that's not directly relevant to the project or task at hand.
Yeah, I really like that. The other one I like is spreading positive gossip. So if somebody's name is mentioned in a meeting, oh, this person did a really good job on that, or oh, I worked with that person some time ago and they were really good. Tell them. That often doesn't get back to that person, but saying that your name was mentioned and this is who mentioned it. This is the positive thing that they had to say about you. Even if you haven't spoken to that person for months, that's a great email to receive.
Definitely, yeah, definitely reinforcing the positive feedback, spreading positive gossip. I love it. So we've got a question in: what BA tools or techniques would you recommend with approaching this? Empathy maps was a great suggestion. I was thinking of POPIT, so people, organisation, process, information, and technology. But any others to recommend?
So during the session, I'm going to be going through 4 techniques. Some of them will be familiar to people, things like the sailboat technique, which are quite often used in retrospectives. I'm not using this as part of the session, but I also do like force field analysis to help frame a problem and think and help you think about kind of what's acting in my favor and what's acting against me. I think there's lots of BA tools that we can use on ourselves, and we don't necessarily dust off our toolkit and apply it to our own problems perhaps as much as we should.
Completely agree with that. I think a lot of the external environmental analysis tools can be used at various levels as well, because you can consider yourself and your team inside the organization, and there's lots of external pressures on it, but also you can think about it in terms of your own career. And there's all sorts of innovations and change happening, and we've all got to keep up with that, right? We've got to keep up with that to stay relevant.
Certainly for people who have felt a little bit stuck in their current project or their current role, I've used SWOT analysis with people to help them think about their strengths and weaknesses and how that helps them inform a role that would be really suitable for them in future, and what opportunities they've got, even within their current organisation, to use those strengths a little bit more.
Fantastic. So I know you're speaking at the Building Business Capability Conference in May, and I'm sure that'll be an absolutely phenomenal session. Really, really unfair question to ask you, but if there was a key takeaway that you think people are going to take away from your session, what would that takeaway be, without giving too much away?
So for me, it's about the value of reflection. Thinking about, what have I done? What's got me here? How do I want to be? How do I want people to see me? And as I said at the start, it's really easy to think you can only learn things through feedback and through what other people have to say about you. But using the right structured technique allows us to have a thinking framework to come up with really positive observations and positive actions that can help us move forward. So the power of personal reflection would be my key takeaway.
The power of personal reflection. I like that a lot, and I like what you said there about positivity, because there is a certain element, and I know we've talked about this before a lot in the past, to remember the negative. You remember the one bad thing and sort of dwell on it. It's that positive personal reflection. So fantastic. Well, Tina, I mean, if we think about the conference that's coming up, I mean, always think it's hugely exciting. So I suppose another thing to ask you generally is not just the BBC conference, but conferences in generally. Why do you think? I mean, or do you think? I assume you think it's a good thing for people to go to, but what really excites you about going to a conference like the BBC?
Early in my career, I didn't really understand the value of conferences and actually put my effort into certified training courses rather than conferences, because I thought that's putting something on my CV, I'm learning something, and I had the impression that I would learn more from a training course than I would from a conference. My view on that is really been challenged actually by some of the amazing conferences that I've attended in the last few years, where you don't know what you're going to learn, you don't know who you're going to meet, but I always come away so motivated with so many ideas, people that have inspired me. I do find that conferences are such a motivating element of my work calendar. And certainly, training courses are great for learning new skills, but conferences are great for energizing and networking and really being inspired.
Absolutely, absolutely. And finally, I am absolutely sure that people tuning in will want to stay in touch with you. They'll want to find out more about what you do. How can people stay in touch?
So I'd be delighted to connect via LinkedIn, where I share most of the work that I'm doing and things that I'm up to. I also write regularly for the BA Times, which is a great source and resource for BAs at all points in their career to learn a little bit more about business analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tina, thank you so much for taking the time out to have a chat today. And for those of you tuning in live, we'll be trying to get probably pretty much as many speakers from the BBC conference as we can to do little preview sessions like this. Whether you're going to the conference or not, you'll get to hear a little bit of what's happening at the conference. So bye everyone for now, and see you again sometime soon. So take care. Bye for now.